On the morning of September 12, 1991, in the small town of Ridgemont, Illinois, a third-grade teacher named Mrs. Patricia Brennan began calling attendance in her classroom at Lincoln Elementary School. The children answered one by one, their voices echoing in the bright room decorated with alphabet charts and construction paper art. But when Mrs. Brennan called out Sarah Matthews, there was silence. An empty desk sat in the third row. What made this moment impossible was that Sarah Matthews had vanished from her bedroom 3 years earlier. She was 12 years old now, not 8. She shouldn't have been on any third-grade roster. Yet there was her name printed in the official attendance book, as if she had been enrolled all along. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Ridgemont was the kind of town where people left their doors unlocked and children rode bicycles until the streetlights came on. Population just under 4,000. One main street with a hardware store, a diner, and a post office that closed at 3. The elementary school sat at the edge of town, a single-story brick building surrounded by cornfields that stretched toward the horizon. In places like this, everyone knows everyone. Crimes don't happen quietly. Strangers are noticed immediately. The Matthews family lived on Oakwood Drive, a quiet street lined with modest homes and mature trees. Richard Matthews worked as a shift supervisor at the grain elevator outside town. His wife, Linda, kept the books at a local dental office. They had 2 daughters. The older one, Sarah, was 8 years old in the summer of 1988. Her younger sister, Emily, was 5. Neighbors described the family as unremarkable in the best sense of the word. They attended church on Sundays. They mowed their lawn. They waved when you drove past. Sarah was a quiet child. She liked reading more than television. She collected smooth stones from the creek behind the school. Her teacher that year said Sarah was the kind of student you sometimes forgot was in a room, not because she struggled, but because she never caused trouble. She completed her work early and sat with a book while other children asked questions. She wore her hair in 2 braids most days. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow from falling off a swing when she was 4. On the evening of August 14, 1988, the Matthews family ate dinner together. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Linda Matthews would later recall that Sarah had seemed normal, maybe a little tired. But it was summer, and the children had spent the afternoon playing outside. After dinner, Sarah and Emily watched one episode of a television show in the living room while their parents cleaned the kitchen. Around 8 o'clock, Linda told the girls it was time to get ready for bed. Both children went upstairs. Linda heard water running in the bathroom. She heard footsteps in the hallway. She heard the door to the girls' bedroom close. Richard Matthews checked on them around 8:30. Both girls were in their beds. Emily was already asleep, curled on her side facing the wall. Sarah was reading under her covers with a flashlight, something she did almost every night. Richard told her to put the book away. Sarah nodded. He turned off the overhead light and pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it open just a crack the way the girls preferred. He went downstairs and watched the news with his wife. They went to bed themselves around 10:30. The house was quiet. The doors were locked. Everything was as it should have been. Linda Matthews woke at 6 the next morning. She showered and dressed, then went to wake the girls. When she opened their bedroom door, Emily was still asleep in her bed. Sarah's bed was empty. The sheets were pulled back neatly, as if she had simply gotten up and walked away. The window was closed and locked from inside. Sarah's clothes from the previous day were folded on her dresser. Her shoes were lined up by the closet. The flashlight lay on the floor beside her bed, switched off. The book she had been reading was on her nightstand, a bookmark placed carefully between the pages. Richard Matthews searched the house while Linda called the police. They checked every room, every closet, the basement, the garage. Sarah was not there. The back door was still locked. The front door was locked. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication that anyone had forced their way inside. Within 20 minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Within an hour, volunteers were walking to the surrounding fields, calling Sarah's name. By afternoon, the state police had joined the search. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled overhead. Divers checked the creek and the pond at the edge of town. No trace of Sarah Matthews was found. The initial investigation focused on the most common explanations. Police interviewed Richard and Linda Matthews separately and together. They took polygraph tests, which both passed. Investigators examined the family's finances, phone records, and background. There was no evidence of abuse, no history of domestic violence, no suggestion that either parent had harmed their daughter. Friends and family described the Matthews as loving and attentive. Emily, the younger sister, was interviewed by a child psychologist. She said she had been asleep. She hadn't heard anything unusual during the night. She didn't know where Sarah had gone. Detectives considered the possibility that Sarah had run away, but this theory presented immediate problems. She was 8 years old. She had no money. She had taken nothing with her, not even her shoes. The house was locked from the inside. A child cannot lock a door behind herself from the outside. When investigators raised this point, the lead detective, a man named Gordon Hale, suggested that perhaps Sarah had left earlier in the evening and someone in the family had locked the door later, without noticing she was gone. But Richard Matthews insisted he had checked both doors before bed, as he did every night. This had been his routine for years. The community responded with the kind of urgency small towns are known for. Search parties went out every day for 2 weeks. Posters with Sarah's photograph appeared in store windows across 3 counties. A tip line was established. Dozens of calls came in. A woman in Iowa reported seeing a girl matching Sarah's description at a rest stop. Police investigated and determined it was not her. A man in Missouri called to say he had seen a child who looked like Sarah getting into a van at a gas station. Officers followed up. The girl was accounted for. She lived nearby with her grandmother. As the weeks passed, the investigation began to slow. Leads dried up. The searches grew smaller. The tip line received fewer calls. By October, the case was still open, but active efforts had largely ceased. Detective Hale told a local reporter that they were pursuing every credible lead, but he did not say what those leads were. When pressed, he said only that the investigation was ongoing. The Matthews family held a small memorial service at their church, though no body had been found. Linda Matthews could not bring herself to call it a funeral. She referred to it as a prayer gathering. Neighbors attended and brought casseroles. No one knew what to say. Life in Ridgemont returned to something resembling normal, at least on the surface. But Sarah Matthews had not been forgotten. Her face remained on posters that had begun to fade in the sun. Her name was mentioned in church. Her empty desk at Lincoln Elementary was left as it was for the first month of the school year before another student was assigned to it. The Matthews family did not move away. Richard continued working at the grain elevator. Linda returned to the dental office. Emily started first grade. They lived quietly, waiting for answers that did not come. Then, in September 1991, 3 years after Sarah disappeared, a substitute teacher named Margaret Coleman arrived at Lincoln Elementary to cover class for a teacher who was out sick. Mrs. Coleman had taught in the district for years, but had recently retired and only occasionally filled in when needed. She was given the attendance roster for the 3rd grade class. She would be supervising that day. As she called roll that morning, she read each name from the list. When she reached Sarah Matthews, she paused. The name was familiar. She looked up, expecting to see a raised hand. There was none. An empty desk sat in the 3rd row. Mrs. Coleman marked Sarah absent and continued down the list. During her lunch break, Mrs. Coleman mentioned the name to the school secretary, a woman named Helen Grant, who had worked at Lincoln Elementary for nearly 20 years. Helen's expression changed immediately. She asked to see the roster. Mrs. Coleman handed it over. There, printed in the official attendance book, was the name Sarah Matthews, listed as a student in the 3rd grade. Helen Grant took the roster to the principal's office. The principal, Donald Archer, examined it carefully. He checked the enrollment records. He found Sarah Matthews listed as an active student. Her birth date was correct. Her home address was correct. According to the school's records, she had been enrolled in 3rd grade at the start of the current school year. Principal Archer called the district office. He spoke with the superintendent's assistant, who accessed the central database. She confirmed that Sarah Matthews was listed as an enrolled student at Lincoln Elementary, 3rd grade, enrolled on August 20th, 1991. When Principal Archer explained that Sarah Matthews had been missing since 1988, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. The assistant said she would look into it and call back. She did not call back that day. When Principal Archer tried reaching her the following morning, he was told she was unavailable. He left a message. It was not returned. The school district issued a brief statement 3 days later. A clerical error had occurred. The name had been entered into the system incorrectly. The error had been corrected. No further details were provided. When a reporter from the county newspaper asked how a missing child's name could appear on a current attendance roster 3 years after her disappearance, the district spokesperson said only that the matter had been resolved internally and that privacy regulations prevented them from discussing individual student records. The reporter pointed out that the child in question had been missing for 3 years and was the subject of an ongoing investigation. The spokesperson repeated that the issue had been resolved and ended the call. Detective Gordon Hale was contacted by the school district, though it is unclear who initiated the contact or what was discussed. When asked about the incident by the same reporter, Hale said he was aware of it and that it had no bearing on the investigation into Sarah's disappearance. He characterized it as an administrative mistake. The reporter asked how such a mistake could happen. Hale said he was not in a position to comment on the internal workings of the school district. The reporter asked if the police had investigated the enrollment record to determine who had entered Sarah's name into the system or what had been done. Hale said the matter was not relevant to the case. The conversation ended. Linda Matthews learned about the incident from a neighbor who had heard about it from someone who worked at the school. She called the principal's office and asked to see the enrollment record. She was told that the record had been removed due to the error and was no longer available. She asked for a copy. She was told that copies could not be provided. She asked who had enrolled Sarah. She was told the district could not release that information. She contacted an attorney, who sent a formal request to the school district. The request was denied on the grounds that the record in question did not pertain to an active student, and therefore fell outside the scope of parental access rights. The local newspaper ran a short article about the incident. It appeared on page 4, beneath a story about the upcoming county fair. The article noted that a clerical error had resulted in a missing child's name appearing on a school roster, and that the error had been corrected. It included a brief summary of Sarah Matthews' disappearance and a statement from the school district. No follow-up article was published. When asked why, the editor said there was nothing more to report. The story faded from public attention within days. But the incident raised questions that were not easily dismissed. School enrollment records are not generated randomly. A student's name does not appear in a database without someone entering it. The information required for enrollment includes a birth date, a home address, and typically a parent or guardian signature. If Sarah Matthews had been enrolled in 3rd grade in August of 1991, someone had provided that information. The school district said it was a clerical error, but did not explain what kind of error could produce a complete and accurate enrollment record for a child who had been missing for 3 years. Detective Hale's response was similarly lacking in detail. He acknowledged the incident but dismissed it as irrelevant. He did not say whether he had requested the enrollment record from the school district or attempted to determine who had entered the information. When pressed, he said the police were focused on credible leads and that this did not qualify. He did not explain why. The case file from the original investigation was not made public, and requests to review it were denied. The department's position was that the investigation remained open and that releasing details could compromise future efforts. In the months following the incident, Linda Matthews tried repeatedly to obtain answers. She filed freedom of information requests with the school district and the police department. Both were denied. She hired a private investigator who was unable to access the enrollment record or determine who had entered it. She spoke with every member of the school board individually. Most expressed sympathy but said they had no authority to override the district's decision. One board member, a man named Carl Jensen, said privately that he had asked the superintendent about the incident and been told it was a personnel matter that could not be discussed. When Jensen asked what personnel matter could involve a missing child, He received no answer. The Matthews family did not move away. They remained in Ridgemont, living in the same house on Oakwood Drive. Emily grew older. She graduated from high school, attended college, and eventually moved to another state. Richard and Linda stayed. Richard retired from the grain elevator. Linda continued working part-time. They kept Sarah's bedroom as it had been, though they no longer spoke about her often. There was nothing left to say. The investigation had long since gone cold. The police department's public position was that the case remained open, but no detectives were actively assigned to it. Years passed. The story of Sarah Matthews became something people in Ridgemont remembered but rarely discussed. Newer residents knew nothing about it. The poster that had hung in the post office window was taken down during a renovation. The missing persons database still listed Sarah, but her entry had not been updated in years. The enrollment incident was largely forgotten, mentioned only occasionally by those who had been there when it happened. Most dismissed it as a strange bureaucratic mistake. Some wondered quietly if it had been something else, but did not say so aloud. In 2003, a reporter from a regional magazine contacted Linda Matthews about writing a feature on unsolved disappearances in the Midwest. Linda agreed to an interview. She spoke about Sarah, about the night she vanished, about the years that followed. When the reporter asked about the enrollment incident, Linda said she had never received an explanation. She said she had tried for years to find out who had enrolled Sarah in school and why. She said every door had been closed. The reporter contacted the school district. The current superintendent, who had not been in position in 1991, said he was not familiar with the incident and that records from that period were not readily accessible. He offered to look into it. The reporter never heard from him again. The article was published in the spring of 2004. It included a photograph of the Matthews family from before Sarah's disappearance and a separate photograph of Linda standing in Sarah's bedroom, which had not changed in 16 years. The article recounted the basic facts of the case and mentioned the enrollment incident, noting that it had never been explained. The magazine received a few letters in response. One was from a retired teacher who had worked in another district and said she had once seen a similar clerical error involving a deceased student. Another was from a woman who said her daughter had gone missing in 1985 and that she understood what the Matthews family had endured. There were no new leads. At this point, investigators were left with two possibilities. Either the enrollment was a mistake so improbable that it defied easy explanation, or someone had deliberately entered Sarah Matthews into the school system 3 years after she disappeared. If it was a mistake, it required a series of coincidences. The correct name, the correct birth date, the correct address, all entered into the system for a child who no longer lived there. If it was deliberate, it raised a different question. Who would enroll a missing child in school, and why? The school district never provided access to the enrollment record. It is unknown whether the record still exists or whether it was destroyed. It is unknown who entered the information or whether any signatures were required. It is unknown whether the police ever examined the record or attempted to trace its origin. Detective Hale retired in 1998. He declined to be interviewed for the magazine article. The current police chief, who took over in 2005, said he was not familiar with the details of the case, but that all unsolved cases remained open. When asked if anyone was actively investigating Sarah Matthews' disappearance, he said resources were limited and priorities had to be set. What is known is this. Sarah Matthews disappeared from a locked house on the night of August 14, 1988. She was 8 years old. No evidence of foul play was found. No evidence of her leaving voluntarily was found. The doors were locked from the inside. 3 years later, her name appeared on a third-grade attendance roster at the school she had attended before she vanished. The record was removed and classified as an error. No explanation was provided. The case remains unsolved. What is not known is who enrolled Sarah Matthews in school in 1991 or why. It is not known whether the enrollment record contained any information beyond what was publicly available, such as a parent's signature or contact number. It is not known whether the police investigated this aspect of the case, or whether they accepted the school district's explanation without question. It is not known whether the record was examined for fingerprints or other forensic evidence. It is not known whether anyone attempted to determine when a record was created or from where it was submitted. There are no credible theories that explain both the disappearance and the enrollment. If Sarah ran away, she could not have locked the door behind her. If she was taken, there was no sign of forced entry. If she died in the house, no body was found and no evidence of concealment was discovered. The enrollment incident does not fit neatly into any of these scenarios. A clerical error is possible, but requires accepting that multiple pieces of accurate information were entered incorrectly in a way that produced a complete and functional record. Deliberate enrollment is possible, but raises the question of motive. What purpose would it serve to enroll a missing child in school 3 years after her disappearance? Some have suggested the enrollment was meant as a message, though to whom and from whom is unclear. Others have suggested it was an attempt to see if anyone was still paying attention, a test of whether the case was truly being investigated or had been quietly abandoned. Still others believe it was exactly what the school district said it was, a mistake with no deeper meaning. Each explanation is plausible. None can be proven. The Matthews family no longer seeks answers. Linda Matthews passed away in 2019. Richard followed in 2021. Emily, now in her 40s, has said she prefers not to discuss her sister's disappearance. The house on Oakwood Drive has been sold. The new owners are unaware of its history. Sarah's bedroom has been repainted and converted into a home office. The case file remains in the Ridgemont Police Department's archives, but it has not been opened in years. Sarah Matthews would be 45 years old now if she is still alive. She would be older than her mother was when she disappeared. There are people living in Ridgemont today who were not born when Sarah vanished, who do not know her name, who have no reason to wonder what happened on that August night in 1988 or why her name appeared on a school roster 3 years later. The story has faded, as stories do when no resolution is found, and the people who remember move on or pass away. But unresolved cases do not disappear simply because they are no longer discussed. The questions remain, even if no one is asking them. A child vanished from a locked room with no explanation. Years later, someone enrolled her in school. The authorities called it a mistake and moved on. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it was something else. The truth is that no one knows, and at this point, it is unclear whether anyone is still trying to find out. Cases like this don't disappear. They just fade when people stop asking questions. If you ever wondered about an unsolved case in your own area, or if Sarah's story stays with you, share your thoughts in the comment below.